Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daya Prakash, and I'm your host today. I will be moderating the session today. Um, First of all, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for sparing out time and being part of this discussion today. I welcome you on behalf of SME Venture in association with Entity to a session that has been organized. The topic of today's discussion is building always on and always available everywhere secure IT infrastructure. So once again, welcome all of you. I would like to quickly introduce the speakers today that I have with me, starting with Mr. Naseem Haldar, CISO Echo, Mr. Yashoraj Tyagi, CTO Cache, Mr. Divang Mundra, Chief Technology and Product Officer Credex, Mr. Prabhu Rangaraja, co-founder M2P FinTech, Mr. Gaurav Vishwakarma, co-founder and CTO Friendly, Mr. Prashant Bukil, Chief Technology Officer Being Human Clothing, Mr. Gaurav Vij, founder and CIO WhoLive, Mr. Animesh Sharma, CTO Indie5 Technologies, and Mr. Girish Sharma, Senior General Manager, Products and Services Entity.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome everyone to the session. Just before I begin the discussion today, I just wanted to share a few quick pointers with all of you. Uh, so the emergence of new normal has changed how businesses across the globe are delivering on customer value. I think we all agree on that. More than ever, leaders must embrace agility and enable scalable, secure, resilient platforms and workplaces anywhere at any time if they are to empower business to meet its customer wherever they are. Also, organizations need to quickly adapt their approaches to securing infrastructure in this fast changing hybrid world. Right? So in this session, we will be trying to gain objective insights on expert guidance on topics such as anywhere infrastructure, disruptive technologies, trends, collaboration, networks, management services, backup, disaster recovery, etc., etc. So in order to understand the topic a bit more in detail, let me start by asking question. And my first question is to Mr. Yashoraj Tyagi. Uh, Mr. Tyagi, how to make your distributed workforce more productive while optimizing operations and providing frictionless security?
So that is a great question, right? And I would say that it's and thanks for setting the context there. So the way I would say that is that there is no one right answer to that. It really depends on the context and the use cases that the business actually serves. But there are certain general best practices that people tend to follow. And when you talk about best practices, it is also best practices around security, of your infrastructure, both from internal and external attack vectors. When your kind of workforce, primarily your technology workforce, is also working in a distributed manner. Secondly, it is about kind of having efficient systems that can in which a lot of your attention and bandwidth of the team doesn't go in infra related problems just because they work in a distributed framework. As well as general best practices about how to go about the sheer act of actually building up systems, right, in a distributed environment. So when it comes to security, first of all, because like both from a customer's perspective, from the data perspective, as well as in general from an infrastructure perspective, um, I do believe that there has been more talk about that now than before, simply because of the fact that there have been more risks as well as more incidences of such threats being actually realized both from an internal and external attack vectors perspective, and particularly where there have been sensitive data of customers involved. Fintech being one of the examples, which I can relate to. And I do believe that one of the fundamental problems that have existed, and this is one of the previous sessions we also discussed about, is that the problem was that security, as on a philosophical level, had been more of a a reactive approach than a proactive approach. That you really, okay, that this is an incident that happened. What can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? But it's been less proactive in nature, in the sense that there is this thing which a product manager at Facebook said, that before every release they'll sit down and think about that, what are all the things that can go wrong. This is not a usual QA approach, but this is more of a doomsday scenario, that what counts as failure, right? Like what counts as, like, if we ship this thing, or we have the system up and running, what will count as us saying that, okay, we failed at delivering. And security needs to be an integral part of that, these certain threats being realized uh, actual counts as, like, you basically failing to meet your objective, which doesn't actually form a part of it. Like, people generally focus on us not being able to meet sales targets, or the product not having a significant amount of uptake. Now, when you shift, you're thinking about security from a pure reactive to a more proactive approach. That is where people start taking steps to make sure that threats that were probably on paper are also being taken care of, in terms of the fact that they are basically well understood, and you're building around that as well. And that's one. When it comes to just a way of actually having a distributed approach, wherein your team is able to focus more on actually delivering value in terms of building products and services, and focusing less on infrastructure related issues. Obviously there are some very obvious answers that people would also relate to. One of them is the fact that, as you move mostly to a cloud based approach of having your applications on a cloud instead of an on-premise system, which I mean, like, which I can do, because that's how we operate. The fundamental idea of wherever somebody is working from becomes immaterial, right? I kind of shiver at the thought of the fact that, what if we actually had on-premise systems and nobody was working out of the office, and then something went down, who would actually go ahead and resolve issues over there? But from a cloud, it's never been a problem at all. Like, infrastructure was availability of infrastructure, efficiency of systems uptime has never been an issue, simply because you are working out of the cloud, and that kind of takes away a big concern out of where the resources that are actually working in your team are actually located at. So that becomes immaterial and goes out of the equation completely. As far as ensuring that the teams are still efficient from a very organizational perspective, I think that really also depends on the culture that is ingrained into the team. Everybody, or most of the people that you see, would also follow the same agile approach of having sprints in which work is being completed. And I think that is basically basically the minimum quantifiable amount of work that exists, that what is say achieved in the period of 15 days. And that should be what the underlying cultural thing should be about, that what have we achieved in a period of 15 days, irrespective of whether you are located at an XYZ place or not, because that's where great distributed teams are. That's how great distributed teams are built, that that there's a collaborative approach of delivering things within a set amount of time, and you achieve key objectives. If you are located together or not, that is also, like, completely out of the picture. So I would not take a lot more time, but I wanted to just touch on these two key aspects, or three aspects of around security being more proactive in nature, and hence basically security not being an afterthought. Second is actually having a more cloud-based approach to ensuring that infrastructure availability, reliability at a time where your workforce might not be co-located at all, and not just an interim but permanently, should not be an issue. And the third thing being the fact that from a cultural / organizational perspective also, uh, whether or not people are located together and working should not factor in how collaborative the team is. So that's how I would answer on those points.
Sure, Mr. Prashant. I think Thank you so much, Yashir. I think Mr. Prashant has a point to make here. Uh,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Basically, this is a very good question, as rightly said by Mr. Taggi. I would like to just add that this pandemic has changed the dynamics of the entire infrastructure. The requirements has changed so drastically and within a short time period. So always we cannot say that this is the right solution for that particular thing. The continuous R&D or the continuous changes make us on a platform, whereas in actually I can say that we have successfully delivered the technology setup, to make the anywhere work available, or that fund work. That would, I would say.
Sure,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Prashant. Gaurav, you
Yeah,
wanted to say something. So
yeah. I like to
I'll
add
just come
what
to you, Mr.
Yashwant.
Animesh. Just give me a minute. Over to you, Gaurav.
Yeah. So I like to
Yeah.
add what Yashwant said, right? So I see that
Uh,
people now the teams are moving towards agility and build anywhere,
mhm.
deploy anywhere. There are a lot of DevOps automations are coming into place, and that's the beauty of going into cloud, right? Now cloud is
Mhm.
not only about security, not only about managed the services, managed DR or the after. Right? It's more of an automation, right? So we have Azure board, Azure DevOps. Then we have got a lot of things into Jira. All of these things connected so that we have a CI/CD. You build anywhere, you check in, and it gets deployed to somewhere, it gets tested somewhere, and then it moves on. So one is definitely the automation which the cloud empowers everyone, right? So that is one big area which has actually improved the productivity of distributed teams across multiple places. The second piece is definitely security. Although cloud gives a lot of security features and it's kind of managed security services in cloud, but we definitely should not forget that there's a soft corner also, right? The people who are using those servers or any infrastructure in cloud, they should also be bounded by a fact that they should only access information which they are allowed to, or which is meant for them. If I create an S3 bucket and open this channel to different parties or softwares which may not be relevant, right? So then it's also a security threat. So cloud definitely empowers security, but it definitely needs someone to govern it, right? Same case for disaster recovery. That's third big element which cloud empowers, right? So cloud
Mhm.
comes with a lot of managed services into disaster recovery. If I talk about the serverless infrastructure, it's completely managed, right? Managed by the service provider. But what
Mhm.
about some hacker actually gets into it and removes certain things from there, right? Then it becomes difficult for you to actually get. That's also kind of disaster. Or let's say if I'm having some services in some North America region, and there's a big natural disaster there, and it's not replicated into a different region, right? So definitely
Mhm.
there's a soft corner which we have to look into how to replicate things,
Mhm.
geolocation, and govern them through some security boundaries so that they're controlled.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you so much, Gaurav. Mr. Animesh, coming to you. So at this point of time, we're particularly focusing on the change in scenario where you had to enable suddenly workforce outside the perimeter of the organization and yet securing your infrastructure. So what has been your experience on that?
Sure. Uh, I mean, okay. So firstly, thanks for providing this opportunity and having this critical
Most welcome.
points being discussed in this panel. So, and I just want to top up on what Yashas mentioned, that he made a valid point. During the pandemic, people have really become proactive and ensuring that data is secured, and given the recent instances in last few months, one with a pizza player, one with a wallet one, another with an insurance company, which each one of us might have heard of, that their data is kind of leaked and available on the dark web. So this has got attention to everyone. Uh, in my experience, and so with us as well. So data security or information security, it's not a one time activity. One needs to be really paranoid and keep thinking how can secure your data, ensuring that the right people have the right access, ensuring that not just from the external world but within the organization as well. So in my mind, I kind of take it as like a 5 different layers. I mean, first, definitely starting with the external world, uh, ensuring that some ISO compliance or SMS in place, doing every quarter or every 6 months VAPT, red teaming. If you are in AWS or in GCP, if you are in cloud, that ensuring that your production environment and the non-production environment that should be segregated. Then comes your vendors or the not your core employees. They also access your portal, or they also access your mobile application, or whatever you have kind of provided, ensuring it has a multi-factor authentication, ensuring they only see what they are about to see. I mean, they are supposed to watch the data. Then comes within your organization. So now, even within the organization, there are multiple teams. There's an operation team, there's a sales team, there's a customer support, right? So first, definitely you need to have a right security patch on your OS in your system, but also have a right ACL access control list for each of your team, so that whatever they are they are bound to edit only that's the data that's been visible to them, and they are editing only that part. Then comes the core team. I mean, core team is your DevOps, which Gaurav mentioned, tech, product, analytics, like which are building your products. Even you also need to ensure that, okay, because they know system in and out, that they are logging through a VPN, they have a multi-factor authentication. And finally, your root user or CIO, right? Even to an extent, you should not say, okay, this is a last person and you should rely on it. Even have a 2 or 3 persons. I mean, for a root user kind of a thing. It's not like just a one person who has access to everything. Have at least 2 of them take care of it. So similar to how we secure our assets. I mean, if you are living in an apartment, there's a guard outside at the main gate, and in your apartment, then you have a gate in your house. So that's how it has to be like a multi-level security you need to ensure at the right from the different team from the different world. So yeah, so those were my 2 cents on the security question.
Right. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Anvesh. Makes a lot of sense. Mr. Naseem, what has been your experience of enabling the workforce work anywhere and yet be secured, and ensuring that you don't end up into a situation, right? An undesired situation. You seems to be on mute, Mr. Naseem. You still seems to be on mute. We are not able to hear you.
Is it fine now?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So first of all, I would like to thank all my fellow panelists. They have made all this right point. Just complete the circle. I would like to take a step back here. I think we are talking about IT, digitalization, that how these things are going to help, how exactly these things are going to part of the environment, right? So mostly we talked about a lot of things, how our business are going to benefit out of all these things. Even we know, right? Considering all these fintech or insurtech companies, or I can say most of that, startup world, we always prefer to have things in online because of the reach we'll get out of it, the aspect, the predictive analysis, the data power we are getting out of this platform. It's superb. Now consider the security part and all these things. I would say yes. Whatever I think Yash and Imesh told, it's bang on. But there are certain things have been changed now. What I have realized in last 10 years or 5 years earlier, security is a one of the small division or a small sub department under IT, who is managed to who is there to take the risk or manage or assessment the risk of certain certain products or certain kind of work only. Now things are changing from there to it's moved to a compliance requirement. Like if you're part of any BFSI organization, you will see all this regulator will ask you, hey, do all these things. From that level to it's moved to a compliance. And nowadays I would say security no more enable service, or it's not a compliance requirement, it's a feature of your product. If your product is not secure, believe me, your customer will not come to whatever discount, whatever additional feature you will give them, and you will say, dude, I'm taking your data, but I'm not guaranteeing you that your data or your PI information will be safe in my environment, right? So the concept has been changed. Now people are really paranoid about their especially the customer. When when you talk about the same person as an employee, they will they will like to have the ease of life in terms of work and all these things. But when that customer that person become your customer, he will be paranoid about his own privacy, own data security, because we know what can be happen with your private information or private data. And considering this environment of especially in insurtech companies, where you are having lot of health data, a lot of informational data, it not only give you an opportunity to enhance your business, at the same time it can be a it can be a one of the disaster for your business as well, if you don't have enough security around it, right? Because you really don't know how your computer is going on, how your reputation, especially in this e-commerce world, the online reputation or review matters a lot. So those things are one of the I can say core requirement to today's today's world or today's business, to take our business in a different level. And one more thing, I have seen that changes in little bit, but I would like to have more changes over there that call IT for IT. We are talking about a lot of things about DevOps. DevOps is automating a lot of things, or our product is automating a lot of things in terms of our business and all this. What we are doing in terms of IT, the people who are work for us, how exactly we are going to make easy their life. That is something I would like to see more changes over there. And considering all the security, there are new concepts like SASE, Zero Trust, all this new framework is there. I'm sure a lot of CISOs or CIXOs, they have implemented all these things and they are getting fantabulous result out of it. I'm for sure. And one more thing, I think Animesh talked about it. How exactly you are going to make sure in security. To be very honest, we can't trust anybody. It's a CXO, it's a CEO. We cannot. When we are trusting someone, that means I really don't have enough control on that person. That's why I'm trusting that guy. That's the fact. We have to
Sure.
accept it and we have to move on. Yeah, that's all.
Very
Over to
valid
you.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, very valid point. I think great insights on enabling the workforce of today to work from anywhere. And one of the fact that pandemic has got us into the situation where we see all of sudden the rise of new age technology driven companies, and these fintechs, insurtech that we have spoken about, cloud adoption, being proactive, etc., etc. So the whole emergence has actually shaken the whole premise on which the fundamentals of the pre-pandemic era organizations were kind of pretty much relying on, right? So with this emergence, let's try and understand actually. So I like to go to Mr. Prabhu at this point of time. And companies like yours, I mean, you know the whole IT backbone in terms of the legacy application and all those kind of challenges that Word had been facing, while on their thirst to kind of not just survive but thrive, right? So companies like yourself, right? I mean yours, how you have kind of helped your customers achieve that?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me here. And great insights from all
Welcome.
the other co-panelists. It was really eye-opening. So, in fact, yes, this is the new normal. So, what each and every aspect has to be kind of rethought. Every strategy that was out there pre 2020 have been rewritten in the last 18 months. Like this, the number of policies and procedures that got changed in companies before that and in this last 18 months would have been like phenomenal. So what really happens is that with especially with banking kind of domain, the problem is with the legacy systems, because these are systems that are very large, which are not controllable, where you really can't replace it with say for example, there are still banks that uses mainframes to a large extent. There are still banks that use base 24 and ISO 8583 as a practice to a large extent, right? So we work with these banks. So it is imperative for us to kind of plan how do we create atomic units of certain, because it is easy for our IT divisions to go take a microservices architecture or a containerized based applications and stuff, right? Those are things that almost all the other colleagues here can vouch for. But with banks, it doesn't work that way, because the traditional core banking systems are still on mainframes or are still on legacy systems. So the idea is to have, can we have service that sits on top of these legacy systems, which are broken into smaller, tiny chunks, right? So that has been our approach towards strategizing. How do we build for the future? Say, for example, I can take a very relatable example, right? All of you are aware of how UPI has panned out in the last 5-6 years, right? It grew from a new product which was just launched in 2016 post demonetization, and it has gone on to become the backbone of the payments, the P2P payments. And each of us have used a Google Pay or a Phone Pay or a Paytm in our lives at some point of time. So the transactions are running into billions, right? And all these, if you see, have gone and made a transaction entry in the core banking system, which are still running on those legacy systems. So how banks IT divisions have they've been grappling to kind of catch up to this phenomenal growth. How they've done is that number one is to break smaller chunks, like whatever are the key items that are required for enabling those transactions have been carved out. So additional monitoring, additional resiliency has been added to those layers. At the same time, we need to have controls in place where if there are, controls plus monitoring and alerting systems in place, where if there are certain things that are going on, the other gentleman, I think Yash mentioned about proactive monitoring, right? Yes, we will be able to add proactive monitoring in certain areas where there are transaction patterns. In banks, it's a no-brainer that the first week of every month will see higher withdrawals, right? So each and every, because salaries gets paid out, the people go for shopping in the first week of every month. So it's like a given that there are more systems bound to fail in the first week of every month. So adding proactiveness to the monitoring, to the alerting, to making sure there is strategy to kind of go and attend to any incident is very important. At the same time, the other aspect that we discussed earlier, right, it applies here also, where we need to have a role-based or a workflow-based approach towards accessing and providing access to certain systems, especially when it comes to legacy systems, because the legacy systems have not been designed to have a role-based authentication or an OAuth-based security protocol, or where these are accessed using apps like the Android and iOS apps that we have built. So these are the areas where we need to build a layer on top of it. Most of the banks now have an ESB layer. Most of the insurtech companies now have gone on and deployed the ESB layer on top of the traditional core banking or the core product that they use. So that has to be the strategy towards everything. That when we talk about scale, we need to see how can we break huge chunks of or huge pieces of infrastructure into smaller chunks. So if at all something fails or something needs scalability, we can just focus on that instead of the entire picture.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Prabhu. Before I come to you, Mr. Girish, let me just check if Mr. Girish, Animesh is still around. Mr. Animesh?
Yes, I need to drop
Yeah,
off.
yeah, yeah. So any quick point that you want to make? Just wanted to make sure that we capture your thoughts before you take a hard stop on this legacy.
No, I think Prabhu just made the right point, and yeah, nothing specific on this topic.
Okay, thank you so much.
And
Thank you so much,
thank
Mr.
you so
Animesh. Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Girish. This has been a biggest challenge, right? The traditional applications and achieving the scalability and all that. And you heard Mr. Prabhu talk about new age startups, kind of trying to solve these challenges for the traditional. What's your take on the subject?
Okay, quite an interesting topic, and first of all, it's my pleasure to be with all of you here on this panel. And I was so immersed in listening to all of you because we at NTT we talk to large enterprises and established banks. As Prabhu rightly said, they are sitting on top of some mainframes and the Unix-based systems, and we are talking to them. And I talk to this new cloud-born companies, and I get a different perspective altogether because they will start with DevOps platform. While I go to a large bank, he might start with a legacy application that he is having already, right? So that's a different perspective. Very relevant point that how do we handle the legacy applications? Because see, I've been working with the leading banks. You recently heard about the UPI system. So I was really privileged to be part of a performance testing of a UPI system for the leading Bank of India on a DevOps platform. So I understand that how the new challenges we have, at the same time, how do we handle the legacy application? Let me give you a practical use case. I was working with a bank. How do we handle a mixture, really a hybrid environment for them? While the legacy systems, which are large enough and they really derive the performance out of them, not easy to migrate. We kept them as part of the, I'm sorry, some background noise.
There's
I
some
don't know
background
from
noise.
where.
Yeah, I think we can
Yeah,
put
I'm
ourselves on
sorry
mute.
about that. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So, what we did is we gave rise to a hybrid architecture where some applications are modernized on a DevOps environment while they are talking to their legacy applications which they don't want to migrate. At other times, some of the legacy applications where we really could do lift and shift to any of the newer platforms, we did. In this process, what really we saw as a what we could solve as the challenges. A provider like us, of course, you might think of it as putting ourselves first, but I'm sharing my experience, so I'll be talking about myself. What we did is we actually collectively collected our expertise on managing Unix platforms on one hand, on VMware virtualized platform on another hand. At other hand, we had certain applications which were edge applications and more centric towards a platform like Microsoft. We gave rise to an environment where we have experts for managing all these diverse technology along with legacy systems, and still all of them are communicating with each other. So I think of it solving the legacy problems in two ways. You can leverage a service provider who can give rise to a hybrid cloud addressing each and every format of things. They can connect to each other, and he's also capable of doing a lift and shifts, because the legacy systems I've seen for a long time, they can be you can pull them through for a longer time, but ultimately if you see even Unix market, which has been carrying majority of the legacy systems, even for core banking, slowly they started migrating to all the newer platforms. And I see banks are actually the leading players for me in any of the DevOps environment I talk about. They carry so many applications, very easy candidates for me to convert to some microservices architecture or do the application modernization. So it means that's how I see that legacy can be run till a certain amount of time, but you have to think of modernizing your system to the new challenges. Like UPI is a wonderful example, Prabhu has put. So similarly, you have to modernize, but yeah, players like us can help you centralize a lot of skills, manage them along with other systems which are running by their side.
Thank you so much, Mr. Girish. Thank you so much. I would like to come to you, Mr. Gaurav, and to you, Mr. Devang. So, having spoken about the modernization of legacy IT infrastructure and all that, my question to you is slightly different. It's kind of, in current scenario, we also observed that there has been exponential growth in connected devices, bandwidth intensive applications, and data traffic is putting a new pressure on traditional network infrastructures. How to build resilient and flexible infrastructure to run predictive operations? Your take on that, to start with, Mr. Gaurav, and then followed by Mr. Devang.
Okay, so am I audible? Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, thanks. I think your topic covers everything other than product. There's one product, and then rest of the whole thing covers in this topic, like how you are always available, how you can scale, and how you are secure. Apart from product, it covers everything in today's scenario. So first of all, we have to understand there was a time when we were using monolithic application, then we have shifted to microservices and everything else today. The very important thing is people coming from 3NF generation like us, who have been learning and reading all the way in the books for 3NF and how to save the data. And suddenly they are coming on the microservices platform there. It has to be like it has to think very differently. So the problem comes here that people don't understand how to really implement microservices and using the containers at the development side, because we all know something works on local and doesn't on production. There are so many memes on these things. So we have to make it sure that the development and production environment are as near as possible. Then when we switch to microservices, we don't know whether we have to create 3 microservices, 6, 70, 80, or like 2000 for Amazon. So first of all, how we do the scaling, we have to understand what is best infrastructure for us. So we are adopting right now microservices, and some thumb rules we have said to check that whether the infrastructure is okay or not, microservices infrastructure okay or not, that even if you are requiring to have transaction across the services, you are not doing good. You are still taking the previous legacy with you, your knowledge. So we have to learn that independent service, which is having independence database as best part, how it can be, and the intercommunication, that is bottleneck. New companies like they build microservices, but the intercommunication services, that become the bottleneck. They rely for RPCs and these are things. HTTP is very costly in terms of resources. So you need to understand, you have to jump to RabbitMQ, Kafka for job and processing. API gateways you have to do. Apart from security, I remember Nimish said 5 there about security. I see security at 3 levels. It's important. First is at the infrastructure level. Second is the main programming language and framework and libraries you use. And third is your code. People usually see about my code, what I'm doing right now, and about security, how I'm coding, is it secure or not. But The libraries get hacked. We know there are some bugs found in some existing libraries you are using. They can get your system open. You don't know. And then the infrastructure where a person like Girish jumps in, who we are using Amazon right now. So people don't pay attention to two major factors: the source libraries they are using, whether they are secure or not. You blindly trust them. You do npm install and you think everything is okay behind it. You always focus on your code. That's where the problem starts. A pandemic has taught us something very beautiful. We were not ready for like kind of, we have VPN in company, but we were not ready like work from home culture at that time, and we were not sure करूं क्या इसका मैं. Condition was like it, इनको access तो देना पड़ेगा घर पे अब, इनको काम तो देना पड़ेगा, and then we'll be thinking talking ये job छोड़ के जाना चाहता है, क्या करना है इसका. He has the code in his laptop and he's not in any way, he's not going to courier us the laptop or something we can do. So there are so many things the pandemic has taught us, something which can, how things can change. So security is not something like you can, as rightly said, security is not like one time job. It's to dal mein paat. We'll create more secure things. Hackers like keep trying find the workarounds, and we'll keep find the workarounds of workarounds. So it's an ongoing process, but there are a lot of things. I like the current ecosystem, how it's going. It's enjoyable things.
Sure.
Over to you, Devang.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Gaurav. Thank you so. Over to you, Devang.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Gaurav. I think it's one of the few rare gems who has said security is an enjoyable thing. So it is like it is important, right? It also reminds me of so every couple of months I get an email from somebody like selling maybe a security solution, saying hope is not a strategy, and it always kind of brings me up saying, yeah, like I think it is not, right? And what Yash had also mentioned, right, like about being proactive, I think that is a lot more important now. So there to your question about like with exponential growth happening in data connecting devices, like IoT becoming more and more important, right? Like user generated data becoming like has been exponential for the past more than a decade, and with the geo phenomena and everything, it's happening now everywhere in the country and across the world for different reasons. So so there are I think optimizations that needs to be done definitely at a network layer, right, including things around what protocol to use. As Gaurav mentioned, maybe HTTP is more costly, RPCs are something that could help, or maybe protocols which are much more optimal. So just the amount of data that needs to be done, what needs to be transferred, what can be kept at the edge, what needs to be taken to different data centers. A lot of these decisions are becoming more and more important. Right? Networks are getting choked. Pipelines, more and more pipelines to carry data are being built across the world. The other kind of very interesting side effect of the exponential growth of data is so data in and by itself is not that useful until it's analyzed, right? So with the data comes a lot many ways to look into it, a lot of kind of analytics, machine learning services, and models that people are using, right? So while a big challenge is to get the data to a storage device, right, but the analytics to be done on top of that, right, how to provide the right access to the data to the person who really needs it, right, without kind of giving away more data, especially in the context of DEPA and privacy and all these things, right? So that is a challenge which is becoming more and more real, right? And these used to be challenges that maybe not everybody had to think about, but with a lot more growing awareness about privacy for everyone, right? It's big. It's as I think Naseem also mentioned, right? That security and privacy is now becoming more of a feature than something that, or more of something that needs to be there, and the selling point, than something that is a checkbox that people would just think about later. So I think that would be my take on on your question on the growth of data.
Sure. No, thank you so much. Very valid point. Mr. Girish, you wanted to say something? You wanted to add something, Mr. Girish?
No, so I think I'm totally with Devang on that. That one of the key things that people are talking about, the growing data, we cannot deny that. At the same time, I guess very first question of yours covered it very well. I want to share some of the experiences that when pandemic did hit, I came across many manufacturing organizations which approached us. See, applications are so much so within their plants, and they don't want to have any external access. Of course, that helps them be more secured because all users are operating from their plants. But at the same time, when you started working from home, you had no access to your applications, right? At the same time, I came across some use cases where people wanted to use VDI over a short period of time because they are hit by a pandemic, right? So what we saw typically that, while the data growth is there, the challenges like pandemic, and on top of that, the security challenges, all these three things consolidated you to talk about it each and every different layer of expertise, right? The one is how do you make your legacy applications to an application which are available every time? How do you make sure people are able to access your applications from everywhere? And third, in the critical points, how are you secured even in this evolved environment? So I feel all these dimensions put together, I actually, so service providers like us who have been advocating, so like we have been talking theories about resiliency, cloud transformation for a donkey number of years, right? So although when I started, some people pointed that people like entity or data center people always talk about their cloud or data center or their infrastructure, but even we have evolved over the time talking about now I support all formats of cloud. So I support AWS, Azure, or Google for leading banks of India because they are all are poised in that direction. At the same time, I support my own public cloud services, virtual private cloud, and I run 24/7 security center. Someone rightly said that security is not a one-time thing. We publish a monthly threat intelligence report because even our teams have to be on top of what are the leading threats which people are facing around the globe, and how do we, if we offer security service, handle them, right? It is not the normal patching and updates we follow regularly. It is also what are the new kind of threats, and are our teams ready to face them, right? So I think it is same like the challenges over there, all different dimensions of enterprises are facing, and people like us for whom the bread and butter is to help our IT organizations like yours stay on top of those challenges. Even we have to equally be in the swim and on top of everything which is dynamic around us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Girish. Gaurav, you wanted to say something?
So we talk about, so we were talking about this, exponential growth and all. So, what has happened in this post-pandemic era is actually the entire IT shift in India or even the Asian countries is actually moving towards a legacy development to a startup-based agile, implementation. And that is visible, like, for a startup, we try a lot of things and then we just leave the things at an early stage, right? And earlier, the legacy implementations, what were happening, were actually because people were actually more result oriented rather than just trying out new things. And what has happened is people have now become more agile. Organizations now they're investing more in agility, more in IT as an operation rather than building the entire application in house or on place. So it's going more agile, and that is where Gaurav and they rightly touched a point that data is flowing. So people are worried about data. People are not worried about the functionality on the code. Of course, that's an end result. Now, when data is flowing, it has to be consumed by different services. As a legacy application, there will be one transaction going end to end and everything done. It will be very heavy to consume. But when it's a disconnected approach where everything is separate microservices, which has its own responsibility, of course, every bit of it has its own architecture, and that is where you see there's a lot of shift going towards standards like TOGAF or other standards where we are building, even the startups are building components in line to that, right? Like how a network should be, what should be the network architecture, what should be my risk architecture of my application. Everything being assessed while we implement certain solutions in the ERP or in the application, then roll it out. And that is a shift which we are having right now.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gaurav. Thank you so much. I think one thing is emerging very clearly when we're talking about migration from legacy infrastructure and talking about application availability anywhere, access anywhere, and all those kind of things. This cloud is actually playing a very vital role out there, right? So I think at this point of time, I would like to kind of have a little bit discussion around the cloud aspect and the security aspect. So maybe I would like to start with you, Mr. Yashraj. My question is that how to ensure protection across cloud, data centers, enterprise, and data assets, data protection and disaster recovery, scenarios that you would have experienced during this turbulent time. So if you can share your thoughts and
that's again a good question. Thanks and for the thanks everyone so far. It's been a great session for the last 45 minutes. Everybody sharing their really solid views on everything that we've been discussing. And thanks again, Mr. Daya, for the question. So as far as data security and kind of reliance on any kind of or data leakages are concerned in a cloud infrastructure, it's a very nuanced topic at the end of the day, because what ends up happening is that when you essentially choose a cloud services provider, the likes of the largest ones being AWS, Azure, GCP, you also kind of obviously factor in the approach of element of like what is the security that the cloud services provider comes with in terms of your data being hosted there. And that's one of the reasons also why a lot of people move to the cloud for enhanced kind of security around data storage, right? But that being said, right, at the end of the day, what one of the fundamental things that the cloud gives you is the ability to build out your own security stack as well, just on a cloud, right, instead of having that on premise. So whatever is your whatever are the best practices for building secure applications, whatever is the best practices for storing data, something as simple as the fact that how are you storing PII data. Obviously a cloud can ensure that your data security is there in terms of your data not in terms of certain firewalls being put in place, but that does not prevent unauthorized access or basically internal attack vectors still being exploited to be able for people being able to access that data. Just like what we were discussing earlier had happened with a wallets company, an insurance company, and a payments company as well. And that kind of then boils down to your internally followed best practices. Are you following compliance norms in terms of what are the ways in which you should be encrypting certain kinds of data, and how easy it is for anybody to access personally identifiable information? Because as the size of an organization grows, every single person is basically a threat for an internal attack vector, right? Because same thing that happened with Twitter last year, like people were able to access Twitter accounts of some of the largest celebrities across the globe and basically tweet stuff from their account, and that happened because of an internal attack vector being exploited. So how easy it is for somebody to be able to access personally identifiable information of customers. In fact, that now brings to the question that, okay, like you have n-factor authentication for your customers when they access your platform, but how easy it is for an executive sitting out of a desk to basically access information of customers and kind of relay that outside the company? How easy it is for somebody to download a dump of X amount of data and then like email it to somebody else, right? And that then builds the question of privacy security measures that you put in place irrespective of whether you are on the cloud or not, because cloud is just like the platform where you have a platform on, but how robust are your internal privacy protocols? That is where things come down to how active is your monitoring on not just customer traffic but internal user behavior as well. That becomes again a very, very important question out of there as well. And number three, that when you talk about as I said earlier, when you talk about security, when you talk about privacy proactively, like the cloud being like a platform, but how actively you're talking about these internal threats as well that come in. And when somebody just raised the question of trust, and the last time when we discussed in the panel, we had raised this question of zero trust, and unfortunately because of the pandemic, the question around is zero trust has become even more pertinent. Because you cannot essentially impose trust on an individual, right? Because your trust, when you impose trust at a user level, that basically becomes, as I said, like an avenue for an internal attack. So how much can you enforce zero trust at the most fundamental levels of operation, depending on how much you are dealing with PII, also has become a very important question for us to address. So these are the things that I'd like to say on that on this front.
Sure. Thank you so much. Prabhu, you wanted to add something. Before I come to Mr. Girish for some of the key best practices around the issue that we are discussing, right? So over to you, Mr. Prabhu.
Sure. I mean, well said, Yash. So both, I agree to almost all the items that he had mentioned was like running across our regular security discussions. So one of the key components, like all the gentlemen have put forth like very important points. What we did when we actually broadened the scope and had people work from anywhere, the key thing is education. Right, everybody have to know, because security, you are only as strong as the weakest link in the company, right? Whether it is a system or a person or anybody, right? Like even if it is physical security access, you are only as strong as the weakest link. And the anti-terrorism squad, right? Like we guys have, we have to win every time, right? That's the mandate that we carry. For an attacker, it is like they can win just once and they can be proud about it, but we'll have to kind of keep repeating, rinsing and repeating our exercises again and again. So education to all these segments of people, according to their roles, according to the kind of access that they have, is very important. So we have actually made it mandatory for certain people to undergo a specific training, make sure that they understand the roles and responsibilities, and security as a component is part of our induction process as well. That each and every asset that they own, they are liable for, or they are supposed to kind of responsible for certain areas which can actually impact not just them, it can impact the company and the other co-workers as well. So it should not be just like some of the gentlemen rightly mentioned. So security is like multifold, right? Like our apartment, the security, but we do have multiple keys for our house, which we give to only trustworthy people. We just have to draw the same analogy for security as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Girish. If you could share.
Yes. So yeah. You able to hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. So I think I totally agree with the view. When it comes to security, since you are having multiple internal users as well, and if you read any of the cloud formats that you are consuming, and I heard from people on this platform, AWS, Azure, and GCP, of course, they are the leading platforms you might be consuming. You can see that each and everywhere there are clear demarcations. What are the security responsibility that the platform providers like this and the service providers like us jointly take together when giving it as a managed platform. On top of that, how you are doing your application access and how you are ensuring the security responsibility. I totally agree with Prabhu, as he said. Each and every organization we come across, there is so many educational campaigns and about security awareness, and there are even the compliance certifications that you internally carry out in order to certify that your users are in a responsible way they are consuming, and they understand the impact of any of the actions that they take against the security policy of the company, right? So that has been very important. Also, I would like to say that while for leading banks who are consuming even a multi-cloud environment, so they want to together consume in AWS, Azure, or GCP along with their native cloud they have been consuming in a private cloud or any other clouds, public cloud service from ours. We see they are creating a landing zone to have a uniform secure policy. But all I would like to say, whether you are consuming one platform or multiple platforms, a security baseline is very important. I see from a practice perspective that even people like us, we are pushed either, if we are delivering AWS as a managed service to our customers, there are many platform-based security services which we recommend based on the security baseline to which that organization want to go, and that becomes a de facto uh, overall, service delivery for an organization and how they want to consume it. But those security baseline might be uniform across multiple platforms. It's very important that you keep on investing a lot in your security platforms, and not look at them as an expense, because we see that now. I've been part of so many CIO forums. Like right now, we are talking to all these so much bright startups today. I have spoken to established enterprises. I have spoken to manufacturing CIOs, and I see one thing, that even a smaller thing like ransomware attack, if you see the volume has gone up, and the amount of ransom that they have to pay again has gone up a lot, right? Because your brand reputation is linked to it. Social media immediately percolates that where that has happened, and at times the data is immediately available on the dark web itself, right? So you understand that how critical it is that you are protecting yourself from such ransomware attacks. I tell you, I want to share you a very practical example from a practice perspective. While you have so many endpoints now, do you protect the data of each and every endpoint, or at least the endpoints which are critical? At times we have seen that ransomwares are not only actually they encrypt the data of critical endpoints, right? They encrypt those entire access to those endpoints. At the same time, they also encrypt the backup data that you have kept in the event you want to, dismantle that endpoint and replace it or restore. Even your backup data is encrypted. Do you have a data protection strategy? So many enterprises come to us, and we run a spatial pillar where we talk about data protection in a. So it's a very simple practice. You always say that you should have 3 copies of data on 2 different media with 1 offsite copy. Everybody knew about that in theory, but how many of them actually invested in that? How many of them actually practiced it? I can come from a background because I am handling some of the large consulting firms. I cannot name them for the reason of our confidentiality, but I'm helping some global consulting firms with this simple philosophy that I'm protecting their data in multiple cloud formats with a simple approach of 3 to 1, putting it into practice to such an extent that any anomaly, even in the production data, is detected and raised as an alert that it might be a ransomware, and immediately it is checked, and in the form of ticket it is responded, and whether it is a false alert or it is an actual alert. If it is an actual alert, you have a process to dismantle that system and then check if backup is also impacted. Even if that is impacted, then you go for a air gap copy and then you restore. All I want to bring the point is the practices are available there. You need to set your right security baseline in this multi-cloud environment more so.
Great, great. Thank you
Over to
so
you,
much,
Mr.
Girish.
Dave.
Yeah, thank you so much, Girish. In the interest of time, we actually this is at 4 o'clock right now. I would like to say that in today's discussion, where we talk about building always on, always available infrastructure and kind of keeping it secure also, I see that all the organizations are able to more or less manage this, and we all understand that this is not a one-time accomplishment kind of a scenario. It's an ongoing journey. Gaurav, I remember, I'll recall your words here: dal dal, path path, right? So you have to keep moving, and it has to be an ongoing process. It can't be just one-time accomplishment and say that my job is over now, my life is sorted. So that's not the case here. But thank you so much, guys, for sharing your experience and all that. Girish, anything that you would like to kind of sum up this session, today's session, with over to you, Girish, maybe.
Thank you so much. It is my privilege, to meeting all these bright minds, who are born in cloud, and I should say I was talking about security baseline. For these people, the start line is always very high, right? So when I go to talk to a legacy banking system, they will start from a different baseline. When I talk to these cloud-born, modern people, they start from a different baseline altogether, right? So might be IT as an operation might be a starting point at times. It's quite interesting.
I think I lost or
Yeah.
we all lost.
Yeah, we, I
No,
think
no,
we
no. I think
lost
some
Girish.
problem network network problem with Girish. I think yes.
I think we lost him. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he should be back. Just 1 second, because I had to take one promise from him actually. So if you can be around for just 1 or 2 minutes, I think he
Sure.
should be in. Yeah. Yogesh, if you can please check.
In the market from the way cloud transformation or the digital transformations are happening. We are at the center covering managed services, security services, migration services, or whatever helps them focus on their business journey rather than on their IT infrastructure, right? So it is really a sheer privilege to hear all these bright minds today. Very engaging session. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Devaprakash.
Thank you so much, Girish. Thank you so much. So generally, Girish, I love to, have some sort of a giveaway in these sessions, not in terms of kind or gift, but something which is really meaningful for, distinguished leaders like you have there on the panel, right? So if I may take one promise from you, Girish, that, we spoke about cloud and we spoke about infrastructure at length, right? And you spoke about a lot of best practices, and you being the subject matter expert, bring in a lot of experience, expertise from your industry experience collectively. Is there a way that I can promise my speakers today that there could be a free sort of assessment and a cloud and infrastructure assessment kind of an exercise that could be provided by your organization if they wish to go for it, right? So if there is something like that, that would be a wonderful gift to all the attendees today, Girish.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dayaprakash. I know, I understand, so I lead the product management efforts and I head the entire cloud services practice at NTTI. What I can, I can promise this panel is any of the bright minds we heard today. Firstly, thank you so much to them for being a part and sharing their wonderful views today. In case any of them want, I can actually help them in a free way. I can leverage the experts sitting out of here and managing diverse set of environments out there with their expertise to assess their environment and at the same time conduct a cloud kind of workshop to in a neutral way tell them that what and all cloud options they can consume, how they can optimize, and in line with their growth aspirations, what might be the best ways to plan future infrastructure in one way now and in another way in future, right? As we were talking about the diverse platform, like I might say in other crude terms, your transactions might be very smaller today, and hence your IT infrastructure outflow is very less today. Tomorrow you need much heavy performance handling too many transactions from the same setup. How will you behave in those environments, right? Because I see that when I talk to a leading bank in India, I have to talk on different volume of transactions that they are handling, and while I talk to a startup who's still starting up, their volumes and the budgets that they are planning or the IT infra they are planning might be different. So you can leverage our expertise. I can do a IT infrastructure assessment and a cloud workshop and a consulting report from our side, which you can actually go through and leverage to your advantage. Any of you interested, please feel free to reach out to the team here. And yeah,
Mr. Girish, I would rather suggest that if you can drop an email to kind of all the speakers, giving them this option and let them decide whether they want to exercise or not, right? So, but I definitely see that bringing a lot of making a lot of sense, bringing a lot of value for each one of them. But I'll have them take the call on that. But why don't you please reach out to them over email and let them exercise their right to kind of get this free audit and assessment done from your side.
Sure, I'll get that arranged. From our marketing team, I'll make sure that they get an email from our side, and based on their will, they can exercise that.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your participation, active participation, and it was a huge opportunity for me to learn from your experience, you the practitioners and the industry leader, as to how you are making it anywhere available always and secure, and making it as a ever learning kind of ongoing process for me also. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sparing out time. and wish you all the best. Take care, stay safe, have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's
Thank
been
you.
a great host. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everybody.
Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.